Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for making today's session again. I can see the room filling up, and then we give some more time for our participants from all around the world to join us. Thank you very much for making it here today. Hello, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so sorry I dropped off the internet. The internet went off for a second. Some of the issues with doing stuff like this from Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us from wherever you are joining us from around the world. My name is Godwin Aikbokan. I am the head of the Energy and Environment Competence Center at the Delegation of German Industry and Commerce. I thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar is the second in our series around the topic of sustainability. The first webinar happened last week on the 14th of October, and it was focused on the topic of the different roadmaps, the different pathways that we can follow to achieving sustainability in Nigeria. And it introduced us to broad aspects of that discussion. Now, today, what we are doing is that we are taking a more focused deep dive into the topic of sustainability by looking at a very specific example, flare minimization. Flare minimization is very important for Nigeria as a country because Nigeria has a target to reduce gas flaring by 2030, right? To eliminate gas flares by 2030. And it also has this very laudable and ambitious program called the Decade of Gas, which seeks to increase gas utilization within this decade. There are a lot of things that Nigeria has planned for gas utilization and gas consumption in this decade. And the question is, how do we get there? What are practical solutions by which we can achieve this goal, right? And that is what today's webinar will look at from the standpoint of Siemens Energy. So we'd like to welcome you to today's webinar session. It's supposed to last for 1 hour. Before we go on, I would like to share a quick message from today's sponsors, Siemens Energy. Here we go. Sorry. Sorry about that. There was a technical issue. Let me do that again. Okay, so thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today. Today's webinar is brought to you by Siemens Energy, and it is a continuation of the discussion around sustainability. Our speaker today is Dries Goossens. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. 1 second. So our speaker today is Dries Goossens. Dries has been with Siemens and Siemens Energy for 23 years now, first in a role as a project manager and later as project director for projects related to turnkey mobile communications networks and transportation of water from dams to cities. In that capacity, he has traveled all over the African continent and has lived in Senegal and Kenya for some time. And I can testify that he speaks some local African languages. 7 years ago, he entered into a business development position to promote solutions. Siemens Energy, of Siemens Energy, is providing sustainability assets, providing around sustainability, asset management, and pressure relief analysis. It is Yeah, sorry, I made a mistake with that. It is in the latter domain that we have to situate the topic of today around flare minimization. Further, Dries holds a master's degree in engineering and an MBA from the Vlerick Business School in Ghent, Belgium. He lives with his family in Belgium, and in his spare time, he likes to sport a lot, especially running, swimming, and riding with his bikes. Thank you for being here with us today, Dries. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Godwin, for this nice introduction. I just wanted to make sure that everybody can see my screen. Do you hear me well? Godwin, can you confirm?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you very well, and we can see your screen.
Okay, so indeed, I have a lot of affection for the African continent. And thinking back to the days that I was much younger than I am today, I can say that back in those days, I indeed spoke some words of Wolof in Senegal, some Lingala in Congo, some Swahili in Kenya, and also some Arabic in the Northern Africa. I haven't been to Nigeria yet, however, and thus I don't speak any Yoruba, Igbo, or Hausa, but I do say to all of you, Ekabo, and to anyone else, of course, welcome. Now, for today, we'll keep it to English, if the audience is okay with that. Now, for me, in fact, when working in an international environment with international partners and local engagement, one of the key elements for me to success has always been to transfer know-how. So I'm very glad that I'm getting this opportunity today to talk about a very specific topic like minimization of flaring, which might be challenging sometimes. However, it is so necessary, and not only for reasons of sustainability, which is a very hot topic nowadays, but also to enhance productivity and efficiency of a plant. So let's get started. And at first, I will show you more about our company and how flare minimization fits into our business portfolio. And then we will get to the way we would set up a roadmap. I'll talk then about one of the references we have. And then at the end, there will be time for question and answer. So the claim that we spread, or that we spread, you have been able to see that also in the video with Siemens Energy, is that we energize society. And our mission statement is that we support our customers to a more sustainable world based on our innovative technologies and our ability to turn ideas into reality. So we believe that this market is driven by, on one hand, energy demand growth. So we will need steadily more and more power with all the applications that there are. Then you have decentralization of energy production with solar farms and with the windmills everywhere in countries distributed. Digitalization to steer this demand and supply, and then also decarbonization to cope with the climate change. Now, to achieve this, we have set up 5 divisions, and you can see it on the screen. We have generation, where you can think of power generation plants. We have transmission, where you can think of all equipment to guide the power through national grid systems. We have a business segment around solar and wind farms and associated technologies. Then we have a new energy business division where the focus is more around technologies for carbon capture and fuels of the future, like hydrogen. And then we have industrial applications. And there you have to think about rotating equipment, integrated drivetrain systems, electrification, automation, digital solutions for the on and offshore industry, oil industry, marine industry, fiber industry, and then also water treatment industry. Now, as indicated, one of the big drivers is decarbonization. And so we believe very strongly in sustainability and decarbonization, that is going to be a driver for our business. And hence, we have structured our offerings, not only in business segments, but also in offerings and solutions towards sustainability. And for us, there are 3 pillars. One is to work around energy efficiency. Another one is to work around a fuel shift from carbon-based fuels to hydrogen-based fuels. And then another one is to work around optimized operations. And flare minimization is the topic of today. For us, is part of the first pillar and part of the topic of emission minimalization. I think that is clear for all of us. Now, the goal of this kind of approach is that we can sit with our customers and partners around the table, and that we can define pathways for them based on short-term versus long-term solutions or visions that customers have, based also on high impact or low impact solutions. And this helps, of course, to define priorities, and this helps also to structure the pathway that every industry or every plant wants to follow. Now, flare minimization is then further part of a sub-business segment. And this sub-business segment is called process and safety consulting. And within this area, we are doing, on one hand, engineering and consulting. And then on the other hand, we have also some software technology that we are developing in-house. And within engineering and consulting, we do mainly, well, on one hand, we do process design support, mainly in early phases, where we have some high-profile engineers that have typical chemical and mechanical degrees, because they have to understand the processes, and then they also have to find solutions to move the streams through the plant. We do hazard and risk assessments, especially also when chemical reactivity comes into the playing field. We work around functional safety management. And then there are 2 topics where we have a lot of experience. One of them is asset integrity management, where we work around inspection setup and inspection programs. And then the other one is relief and disposal systems. So the pressure relief analysis, let's say, where flare minimization is also part of. And then we have dedicated softwares to manage all this. And if we, for example, if you're talking about flaring minimization, it's important to map first the processes as such in different units of your plant, and then analyze what happens in different scenarios. And if you know that in a 100,000 barrel per day throughput refinery, you typically have, let's say, around 500 relief devices, and quite some relief scenarios that go from easy ones like blocked outlets to more complex ones like a power cut, then you will understand that it is not so easy anymore to have a very deep understanding of what's happening in your plants. And of course, we can do it all with the basic software Excel, but at some point you're reaching a degree of complexity where you really need dedicated softwares. So we have quite some experience in this, and yeah, so we have developed this also over the years, and we keep on developing that. Now, if we take a look into the oil and gas industry in Nigeria, then as Godwin said already, also during his introduction, I also understood it from my colleagues that besides other topics, government is increasingly taking action by making laws to make it clear to the industry, including for international and national oil companies, that something needs to be done specifically around the flaring topic. There is a topic on itself of production loss, and if we talk about 20% production loss, that's quite a lot. Overall, of course, there's also the environmental issue that creates pollution by burning carbon-based fuels. And then you have also the carbon emission topic. If you are burning your gases off, then you're blowing basically CO2 and nitrogen oxides in the atmosphere. And you don't want to do that anymore, especially not if you can have good solutions to cope with it. So to me, knowing this, it looks like there is really a challenge when it comes to flaring in Nigeria, and there is a kind of, maybe not pun intended, a burning platform, as we call it in management terms, to find solutions and to apply solutions. So I would say enough introduction. Let's take a deeper look into the flaring minimization topic. But let's make sure that we're talking about the same thing. What is gas flaring? And gas flaring for us is the process of burning off associated gases from wells and hydrocarbon processing plants, refineries. And why is it needed? Well, processes normally they run in their nominal conditions, but if a process is tripping beyond or below its operating points for one or another reason that we call a scenario, there might be overpressures in the systems or in the different units, and then it's necessary to be able to release these products in streams safely. And the options you have are typically or bring these gases back in the process as a product or as a fuel for furnaces, or you can just release them to the atmosphere, or you can burn them off. Now, 3 facts. In the previous slides, we saw that there's also the topic in Nigeria, but there is a lot of flaring worldwide. So there's a lot of potential for reduction, and especially, I would say, in the first assessment cycles. Typically, in all countries, you also have limits to emissions, and so one should measure and report its flared streams to the authorities, and typically that also results in a kind of bonus or a malus system, so with taxes that are induced. And then another main fact is that flaring reduction, it's not only a matter of environment, it's also a matter of efficiency and productivity. So it should be high on the agenda of anyone who is involved in a plant, or even on higher levels, because return on investments, there's an easy exercise to make, especially if you know what you're flaring off. So how do we approach flare minimization? At first, of course, there should be a basic understanding of what's happening in your plant. And the first step to take, if you want to understand and consolidate data from the plant itself, is to understand what's happening, what the chemical processes are in the different units, and what the stream compositions are that go through each part of the system in these different units. And basically, we start from PNIDs, the piping and instrumentation diagrams, PFDs, process flow diagrams, and heat and material balances. It is, of course, also important to understand what or how the mechanical setup is of the plant. So you need to have an insight in diameters, lengths, and capacities, but also typically of the way or the composition of the pipes with their codes, with their typical codes. And that is something that we do based on the piping isometrics and specs, but also equipment info of pumps, valves, relief devices, so that we know what kind of pressures are built up in the different areas in the plants. And then also important to know is what kind of risks you have in your plants. And once we have captured all this, we can start looking at the different modes of operations of the flaring. And basically we do this on historical data, historians as we call it. And then we make the difference between routine flaring during operation. And that is then typically the type of flaring that you want to minimize. And a lot of European operators, they say that they want to go towards zero routine flaring, which is what one should aim to. Then you have non-routine flaring, which is typically during startup or shutdown procedures. This is a kind of flaring that is difficult to avoid. And then we also talk about emergency flaring, and that is then typically when you have your different scenarios, like with power shutdown or a fire shutdown. So this is then the distinction that you're making, and then our analysis can start. As I said before, it's important to measure the flaring streams, because as we all know, the numbers tell the tale, and if you know the numbers, you can see how you report them, but at least if you know the numbers, then you can do something about it. And you can do something about it, as I also said, there are easy systems to cope with all your system setup. You can do it with Excel, but of course better is to work with dedicated softwares because of the complexity that you are eventually confronted with. Yeah. So in the upper screen, you see the kind of approach, and then in the lower part, I wanted to make clear that this is an ongoing exercise. It's not because you have done an assessment cycle of your flaring that it's a one-off exercise. We all know that upstream facilities, refineries, or petrochemical plants, that they are like cities, they keep on changing. And this means that there should be a continuous analysis of the scenarios, of the relief requirements, of the systems that are put in place, so that you can run your flaring models over and over again. And that will allow you to take actions and to also take actions towards flaring minimization as such. So if we would be called for a flaring minimization program, then at first we would do an assessment based on historical data or historians. We would structure the flaring events and look where we can achieve reductions based on a good understanding of the plant we are working in. We would talk with operational people, but not also only operational people, but also the plant management, to know what the targets are. And based on these targets, we can start working on prioritization of the different solutions that we would see. Then, of course, talking about solutions, we all know that these plants, they are not just able to stop any day of the year. They are in shutdown cycles. And that means that they need, or these implementations of solutions need to be planned accordingly. And then, of course, with the implementation of new solutions, these changes need to be implemented in the site, not only from a structural approach, but also into operational conditions, and also in the mindset of the people that things have changed. Yeah. And then as a fourth step, of course, there is performance management, where you do continuous monitoring of your system. And in that way, you would go ahead. Yeah. As I said before, assessments, and then analyzing, and then determining the flaring minimization opportunities and typical opportunities we will find back in the process design on itself. Sometimes the process is changed so many times that it is difficult to look back and to analyze what has done in the past, and if it still is a good practice for the design, for the process. We look also typically or change some process operations. We sometimes change things in the flare system itself. And then also one of the things that is typically done in a first assessment cycle, or that comes up, is a flare gas recovery system. Yeah. Now, one of the things that we also do when we have found a portfolio or a whole set of measures that can be taken is that we try to present them in a kind of cost-benefit analysis, so that it is not only easy for people who are specialists in the domain to understand it, but also to bring it to higher levels of the organization, because we also know that within these plans, you typically have 100, if not more, projects that can be done. But it is sometimes challenging to get your project on top of the list, or at least in the top 10 of the list. So we can help also with that. We have experience in that, and it is also something that needs to be done anyway. I think the time has gone where solutions were implemented because of the technicity of it, because of the nice technology. Nowadays, all changes, they are kept against the light to see what the benefit is eventually. Yeah. So let's get to some references. Yeah. And well, I have 3 references with me, but perhaps this one is the nicest one to take a look into. Yeah. So we worked here in the Middle East, on an upstream gas processing complex with 3 existing installations and a new plant that was going to be built. And the challenges that our customer was facing was on number 1, the fact that he was exceeding emission levels from flaring events. Number 2, the excessive flaring came with production loss, and hence also increased operational costs to get the same amount of gas out of the wells. So the benchmarks were not so positive. And of course, as they wanted to recover part of the flare gas, there was a huge utility demand and a cost associated to keep compressors running and store these gases. So here, how did we make the approach? Well, we started with making an assessment of the entire complex. We went through the processes of these facilities to better understand the different scenarios that were generating flaring loads. And in that way, we were able to identify and to rank the scenarios with the highest flare loads against which we set reduction solutions. And of course, knowing what to do has also or has always a technical impact. So we gave them a kind of idea about the solutions, not only about where or what kind of impact they would or could expect, but also about the technical feasibility. We went then also through phases of reviewing and with operational teams to make sure that it was also borne by the different stakeholders in the organization in the end. And then adding an economic evaluation gave us a consolidated roadmap for this customer to move on with. And then if we look at projected gains, we came to about 65% that would be achievable in flaring reduction. Yeah, and of course, I agree. Some of you will say that might be quite a lot, maybe exaggerated. But it is indeed in these first assessment cycles, as typically also in brownfield plants, that the biggest gains can be achieved. And then eventually also by flaring less, we could project 30% less in utility demands for the recovery of the gases. And in fact, these numbers, of course, they are, let's say, a trigger for management to do something about it and to provide the right budgets and to the operational people to get along with such a program. So So this means, after all, that setting up such a roadmap is something that all plants, in fact, should have, as creating an associated return on investment is relatively easy in most of the cases. Yeah. So when we are gearing up, yeah, let's bring it all together. So I would say, if we bring it all together, flare minimization is an exercise that all plants should do, should have, and they also would have to make sure that there is an update now and then of this this program. Yeah. Not only because of plant reliability or safety, but also because of lower emissions, product recovery, and operational flexibility. Because if you are knowing very well what kind of capacity that your flare network and your tower has, it's also easier to creep your production in the end whenever it would be necessary. Yeah. Maybe another takeaway is that the way it should be done is that it should be done through a holistic approach. And it should be done also associated with a cost-benefit analysis, so that it is an exercise that can be taken to not only technical teams, but also to other parts of the operational community within such a plants. And then, of course, yeah, there is the sustainability impact. But next to this sustainability impact, which could, of course, also allow you to fund these exercises partly from a marketing pool, because nowadays sustainability is something that a lot of companies are promoting towards not only the public, but also towards shareholders. It is one of the things that we sometimes see, that people from marketing are also involved to have a better understanding on how they could communicate. And then, of course, there are other benefits that one could derive from such a program. Yeah, maybe to end, I also want to say that we have quite some reference cases with some international but also national companies that are taking the lead in these exercises. So if you have questions, if you have remarks, do not hesitate to reach out to us. And we have people with Siemens Energy in a lot of countries, so we can follow corporations, but we can also work locally. And so for Nigeria, we have people in the sales, we have people in business development for the continent, and yeah, I'm there as well. This is what I wanted to say today, and I would say if there are any questions, please shoot.
Okay, Dries, thank you very much for a very enlightening presentation. Now, for those of you who followed the first webinar, you see a complete, a continuation of the themes in which our first speaker talked about. And here, this seminar looking at a practical scenario about how Siemens applies its 3 pillars of sustainability to delivering sustainable projects for its customers, helping them reduce their carbon footprint. And Dries ended his presentation today by looking at a case study where he was able to achieve 65% flare reduction for a customer in the Middle East. So that is a good example of how these things can continue. But Dries, some questions are already in, and I would just like to ask you about them. Now, you mentioned the assessments that you've done, especially when you were talking about the case that the case study in the Middle East. Now, these assessments, must they all be done on site, or can you also do a remote assessment or from a distance?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So what we typically see is that plants do, or companies, they do have their suppliers where they are working together with suppliers that typically also know very well the plants. And so if we do, or if we come on site, then it would be more, let's say, to do some meetings. But a lot of this work can be done, off-site, I would say. If there is a good documentation of the PNIDs, of the flow diagrams, of heat and material balances, this can be done from anywhere in the world, I would say.
Yeah.
Now, as I also indicated, our goal is also to transfer know-how, so that it can be an ongoing exercise, that people from the plant are knowing what's happening, know where the subtle items are. And so in general, we try to do that during some meetings or some weeks, or a week assessment or a week training, that we come then on site to point out what the findings are, what the mitigation options are, to have a good discussion on that.
Okay.
So I would say it's a mixed exercise, an on-site exercise where walk downs and basic work is typically done by local suppliers. Okay. And then where we would come in on punctual moments, on a day basis or on a week basis or 2-week basis to start the project, or to have feedback moments, or to close out the ongoing work.
Okay. All right. Another question here says, you indicate that the findings can lead not only to huge efficiency of the plant, but also to big flaring reductions. So what are the typical solutions that are normally implemented after you do such an assessment, this first assessment?
Yeah, that's also a good one. In fact, what we do see is that one of the first solutions that people tend to do is to put gas analyzers on top of their flare stack, or at the bottom of their flare stack, so that they know what kind of stream is going to the flare tower before it is burned. And based on an online analysis, an almost immediate analysis, the gas is diverted back to furnaces, if there are furnaces on the plant, to be used as fuel. Yeah. Now, of course, the stream needs to be analyzed correctly, because if the stream is too high in a caloric value, then you might have explosions if you do that. Or if it is too low, then it's perhaps shutting down a furnace, which you don't want to have neither. And so that is one of the typical solutions that we see coming back. But sometimes it's also about changing some processes and having smaller, or doing smaller impact solutions. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Another question here says, what do you think is the most viable strategy to the total gas flaring mitigation in Nigeria? The speaker assumes that you already understand what the government of Nigeria is doing about it.
Well, that assumption is wrong, I would say. Yeah? But I think one of the basic things to do is to get, first of all, a very good understanding about what and where and how much is flared for every plant. It's difficult to say, okay, this is the generic solution. What we do know is that a lot of plants are relatively old, and documentation is not so good sometimes. So it's and this type of working points is about knowing what is happening, because the flaring as such is a result of not knowing very well what is in the plant and what the operating parameters are. And sometimes people from one unit or a bunch of units say, okay, this is the way that my unit or my number of units are working very well. This can be true, it will be true, but maybe for the next units, then that is not true anymore. And what I hear a lot when I go to conferences, and what I concur with, is that it is important to understand a site and to know where the golden tunnel is, where you are making sure that one unit is maybe not working at its optimum, but that it is working at the optimum of the entire process. And so for me, as a general answer, my answer would be the start would be to have a very good understanding of the plants that where you have flaring issues.
Okay. Okay. All right. Another question here says, you indicated that the first cycles will generate the most gains. Can you elaborate?
Sorry, could you repeat?
You indicated that the first cycles will generate the most gains. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so in fact, what we typically see is that once you have built up your basic documentation, your basic understanding, and if you can keep up with this data through a management of change program, that if you have done this first cycle, you will find the biggest gains. You will have your program put together, and then typically before you would have executed all the items of your list, you might be 3, 4 to 6 years further, especially if there is a shutdown involved. So meaning that once you have gone through this first cycle, in addition to the fact that you're keeping up with the changes in your plant, with the changes in your process, that there is less to gain in a second cycle or in a third cycle over the number of years. That is what I wanted to say, that or what I wanted to mean when I said that in the first assessment cycle, you typically find the biggest shortcomings.
Another question here it's quite complex. He says, how does the new flared gas to power systems in combination with containerized computing data centers affect your flare gas recovery system business? So what he means by containerized computing data centers, it's like crypto mining, containerized crypto mining solutions.
Yeah, well, I don't know if the one thing has to do with the other thing. I think these crypto containers, they might be working based on electricity, and here the topic is more related to oil and gas plants, where you're trying to minimize the output of relief devices, because your process is not well arranged, let's say. So yeah, maybe that is yeah, I would say I don't know. I think it's two different things here.
Yeah, it is different things. You know, from what I understand about, you know, some Canadian gas sites, is that what they did is that they put they got the flare gas, and then they got a turbine, and then they got a crypto mining container to be able on the same site, so that they can make some money, you know, from flare reduction. So I don't know if that is specifically related to what you are talking about today. The last question.
Yeah, well, watch out. So what I wanted to say also is that if you're burning your gas, then, or your product that you are refining or producing, it's just like burning money in a certain sense. So if you can recover it in one way or another, it's always a better solution.
Yeah.
But by doing so, it's not going to be for free. It's never going to be for free. So if the person who asked the question thinks that he would get the gas for free, and then put a turbine, which costs also quite some money, to generate electricity to do the mining of the cryptos, might be a business case. I have seen some slides, but I haven't seen it on, let's say, some events that are organized for the larger public. Now, if the person wants to get in touch with me to see if we have solutions related to that, I can try to find it back, the topic. Yeah. But I think the flare minimization is typically more used to work around recovery of production loss, and around sustainability and efficiency of the plant as such, and not trying to lead it to another application. In fact,
exactly. That should be the first goal for flare minimization: improved efficiency around the plant. The last question here says, the references you are talking about are brownfields. How can one make sure that greenfields or new plants don't have the issue of excessive flaring?
Yeah. Well, for greenfields, in fact, it's necessary that within the FEED study, that this pressure relief analysis in general is also a major topic, so that it is very well understood what is happening in the process, especially during which scenarios, so that you can avoid flaring or heavy flaring loads during initial operations. So there's also kind of work that we do typically for or in conjunction with EPCs. So the bigger companies that are engineering, doing the procurement and doing the construction of new plants. So it's one of the disciplines that is taken into account by these people, and it should be taken into account from an early stage, and it should then be transferred once you have the operations. And one of the important things to do during operations is to make sure that you have a good maintenance or a good maintenance program, but management of change program in place. So if something changes in your process, or if you're changing something in your piping, that it is going through an engineering cycle where the people from process design and process safety are also involved, because those are typically the people that would go over the flaring, and in that way they can check if there is really a minimum or the objective of flare minimization is still met.
Very quickly, if you can answer this. As an expert in the gas flare activities, what strategies or tools do you use to detect excessive fraud in such sector? Very quickly.
Well, calling me an expert is a big thing, but thank you, Anthony, to do so. Yeah, the numbers are in the tail, as I said before. So, in the upstream industry, you have metering devices that are sealed because the production is measured and is handed over from one party to another. So that might be one of the solutions. But once again, frauding is really not so intelligent, I would say, because you're also talking about production loss. So it's like burning money. So if you are behind burning money, then you are not so clever. So if you know how much money you're burning, then maybe you are willing to do something about it, because these projects, they have return on investments that go over only a few years, or maybe 1 or 2 years. So meaning that it is really sometimes a no-brainer to work on the topic, especially if I see the numbers 20% as an average. It's huge. It's huge to just leave it like that.
Okay, so thank you very much. That's as much questions that we can take today. But there was one question that was asked that I did not ask you because I think I can answer that. The question was, what is the purpose of today's webinar? Well, it's very easy to tell you the purpose of today's webinar. Today's webinar was organized because of the upcoming German-Nigerian Business Forum, which is taking place on the 9th to the 11th of November. During the German-Nigerian Business Forum, we are going to have a very long conversation around the topic of sustainability. Now, because sustainability is such a very long and complicated topic, we felt like it is not possible to have that conversation within a 1-hour panel discussion. So what we decided to do is that we decided to have a series of webinars leading up to the German-Nigerian Business Forum, where we can do a deep dive into the topic of sustainability, do a deeper dive into the topic of sustainability, and bring out themes that are important to the Nigerian public about that topic of sustainability, which we will discuss during the German-Nigerian Business Forum. That is why today's webinar was organized. And with that, I would like to introduce my colleague, Yolanda Oguma. Yolanda is our manager for events here at the Delegation of German Industry and Commerce, and she would like to give you a brief introduction about the German-Nigerian Business Forum that is coming up from the 9th to the 11th of November. Yolanda?
Thank you very much, Godwin. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. As Godwin said, my name is Yolanda Oguma, and I'm head of events and marketing at the delegation and basically responsible for putting together the German-Nigerian Business Forum. Just to carry on from what Godwin said, of course, there's going to be a long conversation on sustainability during the 9 GNBF coming up from 9 to 11th November at Echo Hotel and also online, so that we can allow international participation from those who are unable to travel to Nigeria for various reasons. But in addition to the session on sustainability, there are several other sessions planned. Currently, we have over 15 sessions planned across the 3 days program, mostly focused on agribusiness. There are sessions on construction, financing, with regards to access to finance for healthcare sectors, as well as the advancement of the fintech industry in Nigeria. We also have a couple of sessions planned to discuss the impact of skills development on the sustainability of various sectors, which also ties into energy, construction, and agribusiness. So just to say, it's a very packed program. We're expecting some big participation. We have delegations planned from Germany to attend this event in Nigeria. We are also expecting, well, we've gotten confirmation from the Minister of Trade and Investment to be at the session. The Minister for Works and Housing will also be there. And we're expecting some other very high level participation to be at this event. So I'll say it's definitely the place to be. To network, to meet with new partners, to meet with new clients, and it's going to be knowledge packed as well as a great place to network. So if you permit me, I would just like to share a short video just to give you some other context on what to expect during this event, how you can participate, who our sponsors are, as Gordon already mentioned, and we have Siemens as a platinum sponsor. And I just want to say thank you again, once again, to Siemens for their constant support for activities and in promoting German-Nigerian business development as well. So just give me a few minutes to share my screen. Yeah. Okay. I just need to find the video. Okay, I'm just trying to find the videos. So many documents are open. So yeah, found it now. So yeah, thank you very much. As you see, we have a very large sponsor base. We have over 20 sponsors for this session. And I just, again, to reiterate how important it is to be at this event, because there's a conference. There are also exhibitions from our sponsors that will be taking place alongside the conference. So you can meet with them. You can find out some of the recent products that they are launching, new areas that they are trying to expand to. And I just believe that is a great way to meet with new companies, to expand your network as well, and to meet new business partners. So I will put the link to register for the session on the chat. We have a website where you can also get more information about the event, about who the speakers are. You can download the draft agenda from there as well to see who is going to be at the event, who is planned to be at the event. And if you have any questions, I'll also be happy to answer them. So please feel free to reach out to me directly. I'll also leave my contact details in the chat box, and I'll be happy to connect with everyone. So yeah, thank you.
All right, so everyone, thank you very much once again for making today's session. Sustainability is a very long and very complicated topic and very diverse topic that we need to keep having, the conversation that we need to keep having. And I hope that everyone is able to participate at the upcoming German-Nigerian Business Forum, where we'll have a much longer discussions around the topic of sustainability. The link to the website is there on the chat, so please visit the website, register for GNBF, and then we hope to see you at GNBF in November in Lagos at the Eco Hotels. Thank you all very much for making it today, and we look forward to having you at GNBF and at all our future events. If you have any questions, my colleague's email address is there, oguma@lagos-ahk.de. So please reach out and let us continue having conversations. Thank you very much once again, everyone, and please do enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.